All right, this is Patrick Rogers, and today we have the privilege to have Cullen Raichart on the show. And Cullen's the CEO of GreenBroz. Welcome to the show, Cullen.
Thank you, Patrick. Appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today.
Absolutely, man. So Cullen lives in Las Vegas with his wife and 3 children. Cullen is a Naval veteran, so near and dear to my heart. After the Navy, Cullen was a chief engineer for Hewlett Packard. And about 10 years ago, he saw a huge opportunity in the cannabis industry and started GreenBroz. And GreenBroz creates harvesting automation machinery and is pretty much the go-to company now in this space for efficiency in harvesting. So Cullen, again, great to have you on the show. Before we dive into GreenBroz and your journey, what's one interesting fact that not many people know about you?
Well, I have a I had a troubled point in my life just out of high school, and actually well, I mean, no, without going into detail, I have an expunged record because I did clean myself up, but I made some decisions that were questionable at best. But they did lead me to the Navy, and so I ended up, spending time in the Navy, and an invaluable experience, to be honest with you. So, but yeah, I was dumb once.
I think we were all dumb once. No good stories you want to share, though, huh?
Well, not on that count. I mean, it was just, making a series of bad decisions. And, sometimes in life when you get on a decision tree and you just go down that road, and it's like,
you just keep going down the wrong branch.
You just can't get off.
Can't get back on.
Thankfully,
I need to get to another branch quickly.
Yeah. Thankfully, I hit a good enough stopping point that caught my attention. I was able to go another direction, but
that's the one thing about the Navy or military, really. It's really good for giving kiddos structure when they have none.
Yeah, I agree
in a direction.
with you 100%. Yeah, and I mean, I took the opportunity and turned right around. I was on a recruit in boot camp. I had for an enlisted person, I did pretty well in service. I have accommodations and medals and stuff like that. So it was overall a decent experience for me. A couple of West Packs, a lot of sea time for a guy in an air force, in the air side. So
your avionics.
Yeah.
So how many years did you put in?
I was 5 years.
Yeah, 5 years. Okay.
I was 5 years, and I think when I tallied it up, 3 of those were at sea, and I was like I said, I was part of an air deal. I actually got to commission a ship from I commissioned the Abraham Lincoln on its maiden voyage. So I think that since I wasn't attached to the ship, I'm not a plank owner, but I was a part of the Airedale, and I was on the first trip on it. So it was pretty cool.
Oh, around the Horn?
Yeah.
How was that?
I didn't know that water got that high.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm the same way. I took the Nimitz around the Horn, and the waves were crashing over the top of the deck.
Yeah, right. What on earth is that?
It's insane. Yeah, 55 feet high waves crashing on the deck. That's insane.
We had one guy get washed over, but I think that was in the Aleutian Islands.
What?
Same problem in the Aleutian Islands. Like we went up there in a storm, and I think the waves, they said, were 90-foot swell, which sounds astounding because they're so big that the aircraft carrier is going up and down. Like that's a really big ship to go up and down a wave.
A big ship, man. That's a big ship. Yeah, we actually, when we went around the Horn too, we just came out of the yards.
Yeah.
And for the listeners, there's something called a Sea-Whiz, and it's a close-in weapon system. It basically looks like an R2-D2, fires 3,000 rounds per second at incoming aircraft. And this thing, like, they forgot to attach it. And so we're going through these waves, we're listing, and the Sea-Whiz just goes shoop, falls right in the water. There's a couple of $40 million pieces of machinery.
Yeah, whatever. It's just a gun. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, we forgot to attach that. It's all good. Cool, man. So tell us about GreenBroz. Tell us about your company, and let's dive into your journey.
So, I've always been an inventor, and problem solver mechanically, like a very solid mechanically. Always been that way. And a friend of mine came to me with a problem and is like, dude, if you make this for me, I need something that does. He was doing a job by hand, and it was just like this thing where it was so tedious. And I thought, I can help you with that. And he said, listen, I don't care, make me one, you can sell them, do whatever you want to. And so I took it, I made it, and that was my first machine that turned into a patent. So I actually submitted it to get a patent. And I was one of the first issued patents that has cannabis in the modern era that has cannabis in the title and in the
Really?
language of the patent.
Okay.
So it was pretty
Okay.
cool at the time. It was kind of cool.
And is it related to the harvesting and automation still?
Yeah,
Or
so
is okay, yeah,
it
yeah.
was a tumbler box, and it's actually
Uh-huh.
a machine that we've sold, ever since. And
Okay.
um, it does have some outside of cannabis applications, but principally it was designed to remove the trichomes, or the resin glands from
Right.
trimming material, waste material.
Okay.
So it's part of an older, process, a hash making process that historically was done, and has been done, like in Morocco and stuff like that, a dry
Sure.
sifting kind of process. So it was kind of cool. But the box itself, it's instead of having a round, it's a box, so it has tight screens, and the way that it functions is just very efficient. And it was one of those things that basically taught me everything that I know about manufacturing and design and refinement and all these things. Like it was this massive moment of learning that spanned about 2 years, where I went through all this work to take this thing that was huge and get it into a small space that was sellable,
Efficient
and
and compact and
and then and has a kind of footprint that's efficient and usability and all these things that when I started, I had no idea. Take for granted the reason a toaster looks like a toaster. It's there's a lot that went to get it there. But anyway, that was kind of the start of my journey, that got me into understanding manufacturing principally and design. And so as an engineer, I'm self-taught, because I don't have a degree, but I'm a self-taught engineer. I use SolidWorks, and then now I have an engineering team, which I never dreamed I would have an engineer.
Right. Yeah.
Pretty cool.
That's impressive, man. You just have the passion for it, and you see the future for the industry. You're like, I don't have a degree, but that's okay. It's not going to stop me from designing shit and coming up with it.
It doesn't, right? And I think when I look at history of people who become successful in entrepreneurship, it's that kind of idea. It's like, wait a minute. I never listened to anybody else. I remember a friend of mine telling me, like, dude, I stopped hanging out with you because all you did was talk about your thing. And I'm like, yeah, I know, I'm kind of obsessed. But I mean, here I am, here he's working a 9-to-5 job, and here I am with a multinational, multi-million-dollar company. And it's just, the mindset is different, right? You stop listening to the other people, and you stop listening, good and bad. I mean, for a minute there, you're just so tunnel vision that I know I missed some good advice along the way.
Right. Sure.
But I also just ignore the detractors. You just push. And because I found that really the most interesting part of this whole journey has been, like, when I was starting, I had all this support. Like, I had all these people like, oh yeah, it's great, dude. It's going to be great. You're going to make all this money. It's such a good idea. I totally get it. And then you start dedicating this time and energy and resource to it, and you start focusing, and those people start changing. The same people are going, dude, what are you doing? How come you're doing? I mean, I can't believe you're spending all this time. You should just sell it. It's not going to make it.
Really?
Yeah. And it's this whole shift, because you shift your brain, your mind, your focus changes, right? I'm not hanging out. We're not partying as much. We're not doing the things we used to do. I'm focused on trying to succeed. And then and there's this kind of really interesting moment where that shifts over, and people are like, all these same people that thought one thing are now telling me another thing. And I'm just like, yeah, okay. I don't need to listen to any of that stuff, man. I just need to go forward. That was
interesting. Yeah.
It was very interesting.
Yeah. Wow. Because usually I would think it's typically almost opposite, right? It's like your friends and family, oh, that's a stupid idea. It's just, just stick with what's safe, and then when you start being successful, then they get on your bandwagon, right? And it's kind of interesting. You had kind of almost like a different
I mean, just from a support perspective, of course, when you make it and you're starting to do well financially, of course, everybody's like, oh wow,
that's different.
You made it. But there's this interim period where
as you're growing,
where you're going to that point, you haven't quite got to success, and I can't imagine that it's not the same for a lot of people, because it really tears other people up, right? Because they don't know what your passion is. They can't see it and they're tired of hearing it. They don't want to, it's like, it's consuming. it's a consuming
Yeah.
fire inside your belly, if you will. And you're just like, I gotta do this thing.
They don't get the passion.
They can't, right? So it gets hard for them to be, to be a friend in that relationship. It's interesting that you see people who are successful and you're like, oh man, yeah, I want to do that, but you don't know the journey. So when you start the journey, you start to decide whether that's really something you want, because most people don't. I mean, honestly, most people don't want the level of work that's involved.
No. Yeah, they just want the prize that comes with it at the end. Yeah.
And I mean, anybody who's successful, if you get a chance to look at their history, you see nothing but failure. You see nothing but burnt ground.
Sure. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And then all of a sudden they pop up, but the whole time it's training and work and effort, I think, anyway. That's been my experience. Like, hasn't been.
Totally. It's not failures, it's learning opportunities. It's everything that's kind of helped you, guide you. I mean, I'm sure you had a number of those yourself, right, along the way.
No, yeah, for sure. It's all, I mean, in the grand scheme of it, I wouldn't change it. I just, my wife and I talk about it all the time, because you change as you change, and your focus changes, and you become a different person. All of a sudden, the people that you're attracted to, or that group that you used to be with, isn't the same, right? It's not that they're not the same; they're the same. You're just not the same.
You're growing.
You're growing. Yeah, you become something different, and it doesn't always mesh. Sometimes it does, but it doesn't always mesh. That's been my.
Well, just where we're going to, it requires that you are interacting with a higher, I won't say higher level, but a different, not even class, but just, in order to get to where you want to be, you have to be around a different type of person.
Yeah, because exactly, and they're usually people who have some similarities in experience. I mean, that's what we gravitate toward anyway, right? Like, we like to be around people who share a lot of commonality. Like, if we like to drink beer, we're gonna hang out with people who like to drink beer. You know what I mean? That's kind of the thing. And it and when you start to enjoy success in that pursuit, you kind of gravitate toward people who are in the same kind of mode, right? They like that. That's totally what they do. Not to say you don't cut loose and do these things, but
sure,
you do notice that change.
Yeah. So now you take us through your journey. So you've got you came out with one of the first patents with cannabis in the title and the description. Keep walking us through how did you get to where you are today, man?
Well, that was I thought I was going to be like the super wealthy guy. Like, I did it. I invented something, and
it's legit, man. It got approved.
Roar.
I'm gonna sit back and watch the paychecks come. It doesn't happen like that. Huh?
Flow,
so interesting.
Right? But it doesn't. And so I took my invention on the road, and during my road travels, I ran into a completely different need in the market space. The trimming market space, which is principally where we cut our teeth, was wide open at the time, and the machines at the time were anemic. I mean, they were horrible machines, and they were selling so fast though. Like, these companies, like this guy, I was selling my machine at like $2,500, and these guys were selling these machines at $7,000, and they couldn't make them fast enough, and I was like, wow, oh, crap, look at that. That's where I need to be. But I looked at the machine, and I was at the store who was selling my other equipment, and I'm like, told the dude, I said, I'll be back in 3 weeks with a better machine. And because I just saw it, man. I just was like, oh, and I had been thinking about it for a long time. And I saw the way these other companies had approached it, and it came to me like, this is not how this is wrong. You have to do it this way. And for a long time, it took me a while to understand how to do it the way that we ended up doing it. Initially, I was trying to, because we have two blades, one's top, one's bottom, and most of the other machines are barrels.
Okay.
And, so a barrel system is, just kind of tumbling all the time. Ours rotates in a circle. If you go to our website, you can see what I'm talking about. It's just a different concept. And I was trying to figure out how to run the blade and still have the machine open. And it took me a long time to figure out how to do it from underneath. And I was like, oh yeah, this all makes sense, because I had no access to developmental tools. Like I didn't have machines and a shop, and I couldn't make prototypes, and I didn't know how to use SolidWorks. This is all just in my head, trying to, sketch things out. And then when I got and get involved with a guy, a young man at UCSD, he was on SolidWorks, and he's showing me the stuff on SolidWorks, and it's just blowing my mind. Like, this program is unbelievable.
Like, all right, I got to figure this out.
Yeah, I got to figure that out, right? So he did my blade design, and from there it was kind of I did go back up with the machine that was made. I've told this story before, but I'll tell it again. The first machine was I bought plastic from the plastic company, high density polyethylene, and what's called sandwich board. And sandwich board is one color on the outside and a different color on the inside. And this is typically, you'll see it at like playgrounds and stuff like that, where you'll see this high density polyethylene or this hard plastic, and then there'll be letters and stuff carved in it that are a different color. It's because the inside color of the material is different. Anyway, long story short, mine was McDonald's. It was yellow and McDonald's colors. I was yellow and red, like totally McDonald's. So here I am with a piece of plastic I could barely afford.
Just call me Ronald. Yeah.
And I went up and I went to this store, and one of the guys that had been, he was well respected. I still know him, but well respected in the industry at the time because he was selling a lot of machines. And he looked at the machine and he was like, watched it trim, and he's like, bro, I sell all these machines, I've never been impressed. He said, but that's impressive. And at that moment I knew that I had landed on it,
something's here. Got something.
I got something. And it still took a year from that point to get some funding and go to work. And the first year I made 60,000, second year I made 340,000. The third year we did 3.5 million.
Nice.
So
nice.
Yeah.
Wow. And so you went from 60,000 to 3.5 million in 3 years.
Yeah.
That's pretty aggressive, man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
It was pretty overwhelming, to be honest with you.
So you were out there, I mean, you were out driving around, going yourself with this machine, going to the different shows, going to different people, just you didn't try to do any kind of an online marketing thing. You're like, this is
at the time you couldn't, right? You really cannabis was only legal in Colorado and in California, and it was all in the medical recreational guise of medical and recreational, and only in Northern California. Even the stores in Northern California wouldn't sell equipment if you use anything in any terminology around the industry. So, you didn't have a trimmer, right? They would rename equipment, and and you couldn't really deal with them directly. Like I don't know how many stores I walked in and they're like, get the fuck out of here, man. We
can't have that here.
You're a fed. Wow. You're a fed. It's like, no, what went wrong? But yeah, it was a real challenge from that perspective, because I didn't even know how to communicate into the marketplace, right? And my dad was a grower and I had done some growing, but I wasn't connected. Right. So I was down in Southern California, so I wasn't connected into the culture up there. And so that was a real interesting experience. And it's still an interesting experience. I mean, still we're limited in banking, we're limited. And I'm literally an equipment company. We don't do anything around actual cannabis. Like I've never sold cannabis. I don't make, we make machines. Like I'm literally a machine shop.
Sure.
We don't get banking. We don't get advertising access. We don't have opportunities like traditional companies do. So we're still all kind of working around, even in states where it's legal. Like you can't get on the radio and talk about it. You can't get on the TV and talk.
Oh, yeah, it's so much limited around it. Yeah. So how hard was it for you to scale? I mean, you're now into a 50,000 foot manufacturing facility, and you say you're branching out and looking for other manufacturing. How hard was it to scale to get to be able to do this in this industry, right? Because this industry, like you said, you can't get loans. You probably have to find private investors, and even that's, how hard was it for you to get to this where you're here with scaling? And
what's interesting is the equipment lenders never had a problem. Like
Oh,
all the people in the
okay.
around, they were like, "Well, I
Okay.
don't care what you do. Can you pay your bill?"
Okay.
I'm like, "Well, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
here you
Yeah.
go. Here's the balance sheet." So I started. I actually was working with another company who started. They started manufacturing and then for me,
Mhm.
and they had misbid and didn't understand business either. When none of us do when we start. So they had underbid, and every time that they had a problem, they just threw that problem to me and like, "Oh, you have to pay
Mhm.
for this." I'm like, "No, the bid is this. You quoted to build 10 machines for this price. You don't
Yeah.
get to throw another $1,500 on here. That's not how this works." They did that a couple times to me, and then so I went and bought a machine and got a garage and started making my machines. I learned how to run the
Right.
machine, program the machine. Um, and then from there, it was always, that was my focus, was to continue to increase my value proposition by automating, right? So I was
Mhm.
continuously looking for equipment that was
Sure.
fill my needs and give me opportunities down the road. And I just did that all the way through. So when I got to my next move from that garage, um, the company that I was with got raided actually at that time, and they were
Wow.
because they were growing and they had a legal grow, which is at that time was a medical grow in the same facility. Well, they came in to the facility, they raided the facility for them, but we were there. So they took me, my company, and all my people to jail and impounded
Wow.
my truck had these personal
Wow.
firearms in it. They took my firearms, my truck, and all my people. And I'm
Wow.
like, anyway, all that got dropped,
Yeah. Yeah.
and because it was, it wasn't us. And then
Sure.
we moved to El Cajon, and I was in 2,500 square feet, and I was like, oh, like maybe more than that. Maybe was it 4,000? Maybe it was 4,000 square feet. It was big. It's like, oh man,
Yeah.
this room. And then another spot came up next to it, and so we got that. And then another spot came up to that, and so I had these three spots, and I think we were in a total of 7 or 9,000. I can't remember what it was. Anyway, and we were, we were just, it was just going and going. But I had bought some equipment along the way, and then we started looking. I started looking to move the company because California was really difficult to deal in, and the the cost of space was really really high, especially for new space. Like the stuff I was in was built in 1950, right? So I didn't even have
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
electricity I needed. I didn't have, the buildings were dilapidated. It was just really a bad situation. But I couldn't afford to get into something similar in California because at the time it was $1.60 a square foot,
Yeah.
you know, and so we were like, well, let's look elsewhere. So I looked in Oregon, I looked in Washington, I looked in Texas. Oregon and Washington were both possibilities. And then I looked in Nevada because I had been with my wife for several years at that point. I was living in California and she was living here and in Vegas. And so I actually went to the Vegas board and I submitted some paperwork, and they're like, hey, well, come out here. And they gave me some incentives to come out. They gave me a good a tax break on new equipment purchase and some employee
Yeah.
tax benefits and stuff like that. Um, and I got into 25,000 square feet at like a brand new building. I mean, we're talking brand new building for
That's an upgrade and a half.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for 60 cents. Like I was at 60
Oh,
cents,
wow.
which was less than I had ever paid in California. And it
Right.
was all brand
Right.
new. So I took all my equipment that I had in California, and I took only a couple pieces with me. And I bought all new equipment. I
Wow.
sold everything that I had. I took
Uh-huh.
whatever money I got out of that. I put my down payments, and I bought all new equipment in
Mm.
Nevada. And the first year, and I did all that. I bought all that equipment. That first year was the first year we made money, and I was like, "Holy cow, this is really interesting." The climate, when your overhead comes into that right place, and your sales
Mhm.
volume matches up, it's like magic moment.
Mhm.
And we did
Mhm.
pretty well. Um, but I've continued to we're a little over, we probably don't need 50,000 square feet, but you know, I
Mhm.
I hate not having it if you need it, you know.
Yeah, you will soon, man. You'll keep growing.
Yeah. And so I hate not being there. And then as equipment goes, we've always
Mhm.
bought, like I bought equipment that was a step ahead of me. And I do that very often. I I don't like to buy. I do buy used equipment. I buy some show equipment. I bought some a mill and a lathe that were show pieces. We got lots of hours on them, but it's not hard hours because they're sitting in a showroom training.
Sure.
So I bought some stuff like that. Most of the stuff I buy is new, but it's always above my head. And the reason I do that is because I don't want to spend where I am, because then I'm just limited to who I am. And I like to think outside of that and go, well,
sure. Yeah. Plan for the future, plan for expansion and growth.
Right. Spending into
So,
opportunity. Yeah.
So how do you guys get most of your business now? Is it basically brand, reputation, referrals? Are you doing other methods?
Yeah. I mean, we can now Google. So you use Google. We have salespeople out in the field who are, actively looking and finding people in the business. Everybody who's in business legally is registered in the state databases. So you can find them. There are tools out there that collate data, so you can see who does, who has the most production, and so you can kind of get an idea for the companies that you should be talking to. And then there's the reputational awareness, and then we have a pretty massive database of like 27,000 customers that all that are all opportunities, right, for us to reach back out to and communicate with, and for us to get that, continue to build that relationship, because one of the things that you don't want to do is like turn and burn, right? You just don't want to sell and go, and then you get this really bad reputation, right? You just get this, you get this reputation of being, you're
not really a partner. You just kind of, you're just transactional, right?
Yeah. And I mean, there's some companies like that. One of the companies that's out there, and they're I won't try and give away who they are, but
yeah, you're good.
They have this reputation, we're M&A, we're putting all this together, and that's kind of one of those things in cannabis that we all know M&A is happening. We all know that these companies are consolidating, converging, but cannabis still has a really interesting cultural side to it, where it's like, community based, especially if you go into like Northern California, where you have generational, business people in cannabis, right? And to say that they aren't business people would be dumb, because they've been doing it for 3 generations.
Yeah.
Absolutely. May not have been legal, but it was business nonetheless. And so there's a big negativity around the suits and the kind of corporatization of the industry. It's happening. And that's not the point, right?
It's unavoidable.
This is what it is. But culturally, there's a disconnect, right? When people feel that kind of disconnect. Like we sold equipment to we didn't sell our company. We sold equipment to a big distributor, and word went through the industry like, oh, you guys got bought by the evil giants. I'm like, no. They sell some of our equipment. It's okay.
Yeah. So that's something you had talked about in our pre-call, is that when you were with corporate America, you didn't really understand or get the structure, but now that you're growing in size, you do get it. Tell me more about what that means for you, and what you've done inside your company from what you've learned.
Well, I remember, so when I was with I think it was SAIC, they went through ISO 9000, right? So they were like 45,000 people, not huge, but big company, government contracting company. And that came in like this, like a weight, right? It was like fucking smash. You're gonna be ISO, and everybody down here is going, whoa, what the fuck? We're all freaking out.
We gotta,
I'll send these people to school, and everybody went off to training. Do this document. You got to do this. You got to get this. We got to have all. And you're like,
it's a big deal. It's a lot of work for an organization to become ISO, especially if they've never done it before.
Right, and especially at that size, like you were at that size. That came in from the top and crushed everybody. So you couldn't see it from where I was at that time. I was working, on defense messaging. I was working for, defense messaging basically. So I was on a Navy contract, military contract. So at that time, that pushed down, I was always like, why, whatever. But really quickly, when we got into serious production, I realized that there was all these things that were not being controlled in my organization. We were having material issues. We were having assembly issues. We were having, part loss issues. We were having inventory management issues. We were having, every issue you can have.
A lot of quality control issues. Yeah.
Quality control, right? So I started looking at loss, and when a lot of money is coming in, you're completely unconscious. You don't because you don't see it, right?
You're not watching it.
It doesn't mean anything
Yeah,
to you,
totally.
whatever. It's like dirt on the floor. And what we found was that there was a lot more on the floor than we expected. And so I started looking into incremental, how do we change culture? So I started doing morning briefings. We started doing, implementing lean, and started to put in documentation structure, started putting in SOPs. I got everybody in the company to write SOPs. We do really basic SOPs. Like, you would be shocked, but to me, that's what you need, right? That, because
simple, easy. Yeah.
If the person who's doing the work writes the SOP, the next person who does the work should be able to understand what they wrote, right? If I have Dr. Joe write the dang SOP or engineer
it's not
Bob,
gonna happen.
Everybody's gonna be
what
like,
do they say?
What the hell?
Yeah, you got to make it so like a 12-year-old can do the task, right? If you do that, then you're good, right?
Right, but it brings this consciousness and awareness to people as doing their job, like, oh,
absolutely, this
is how I do it. And then the other thing is too, you can't really do improvement or make improvement until you understand what it is you actually do. And so the whole implementation of documentation exercise, which is, we're presently going through ISO 9000, and I understand exactly why now, right? And I understand exactly why they were looking for this structure and what they were looking for, and I understand why you put these these control mechanisms in place, because without them, you don't have a way of detecting your faults, and who's going to detect them? My customer base. And if I screw my customer base over, I'm not going to be in business anymore. So
you lose customers. Absolutely
correct. So I have to look at myself and get myself in order. And the other thing is too, like, product consistency. And what does that mean? Like, I look at a product and you look at a product and you go, oh, that's beautiful. And I go, oh, I don't like that one at all. I don't like the way that looks. I like it the way this looks. So for us, one guy's judgment is subjective, right? But if he has a document and pictures he can follow to give his quality analysis, it's no longer
you're giving us some objectivity. Yeah,
you're giving some objective points of view.
Yeah.
Right? So there's still always going to be some human element to it, and that's fine. And I like that in labor as well. I like human creativity and human element. I don't want to have robots. We don't want to restrict people's abilities, but what we want to do is make sure we don't take knowledge, ingrained knowledge that is wrong, and pass it down to the next guy. This has happened throughout my history of my company. We used to have 6 different guys, and they all built machines. And there was this one panel that was we used to make them out of plastic. There's this one panel that had a hole in it that you would run this motor cord through. Well, in one area of the shop, I have a person putting connectors on cords, and then the motors would go out. And then they go install the motor, and they couldn't fit it through the hole, so they would cut the cord off that I just put on. They would stick it through the hole, and then they'd put the thing back on. Right? And this is literally, like, we're talking about 20 feet from each other. Like, no one is communicating to this person, hey, don't put that on, or there's a problem. No one says anything. So I'm out there just, I'm just having a great time. I'm like, CEO guy running around thinking everything's fine. And I walk up to the line. I'm like, I watch this guy cut this cord off. I'm like, whoa, what the hell are you doing? So it doesn't fit through that hole. I'm like, okay. He goes, we always do this. I said, what do you mean you always do that? Well, we've always done it this way. What does that mean? How do you mean you've always done that? Everybody does it that way. So I ask everybody, yeah, that's how we do it. Who told you how to do that? I don't know. It's always been that way. Like, this is
one person started, told one person, and boom, that's how it is.
Yes. And now I'm like, what? Oh my God. So, I mean, literally, I got, hold on. I went up to my engineer. I said, make that hole like a half inch bigger. Bam, done. Game over. Like, that problem is solved. But the problem is that we had somebody who was very ingenious, right? Who created a solution to a problem, but didn't communicate the problem. Because he didn't have any documentation that told him how he had to do it. And he said,
Right.
well, I can't do it according
Right.
to documentation. He didn't have that problem. He just came up with a
Yeah.
solution.
It's just the way we've always done it.
Yeah. And then it became, then became urban legend in my shop.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I
Yeah,
just,
it's
ah,
yeah. Yeah. Well, that's a sign, right? It's like, okay, it's time to get the SOPs in. It's time to standardize what we're doing. Awesome.
yeah. So you do
This is
that. And I mean, I had and we went from that point, we went from that model to an assembly line. Sorry,
assembly lines. Yeah, sure. Okay.
yeah, so we went to more of an assembly line structure, which helped us. It's not necessarily the proper structure, but it is a structure. And what it did do is it gave us the opportunity to go, step one looks like this, step two looks like this, step three looks like this, step four, step five.
Yeah.
Are those all the same time frame? Nope. Step one's a little long. What can we move? Can we combine? Oh, let's combine step 3 and 4. And now all of our steps are pretty balanced in time. That means our machines flow right through. And what that did was give awareness to how you build in order. And then you go, so now I know all my machines, because they have to go from this step to that step. And in order to get it from this step to that step, you have to do the steps and mark that you did them. And the next guy has to mark that he received the machine.
It's a lot more organized. Yeah.
And all of a sudden,
totally.
You're not missing parts. And now we have boxes of kits that go with each machine that has every parts. If there's a piece of material in that box at the end of the build, somebody did something wrong, right? Another check, like, because we only put 4 screws. You only need 4. You only get 4. You don't get extra, right? So all that stuff has kind of honed our ability to be able to manufacture and bring new product to the market in a rapid way. I mean, it just helps with everything. It helps us to understand what our inventory consumption is going to be. It helps us to understand what our spend is going to be. It helps us to understand where we can find problems, because you could see them show up. And I tell my people, the most junior people, if you learn how to write an SOP and you take that with you to your next job, you are going to be more valuable than anybody else. Because nobody knows how to do this. It's just a simple structural thing. Write it down, do what you wrote. And then if that's a problem, now you can change it. And you can say to somebody who can help that, hey, look, I found another way to do this. If I switch step 3 and step 4, I go
right. So they're living documents. And it's great too, because when you get new people on board, well, now they have a training document. They have a training library to take from. Cool.
And I don't have to worry about urban legend.
No more urban legend. So you had mentioned in our pre-talk that when I asked the question, what's the biggest failure you learned from as a CEO, you had talked about a bad product launch and the cost of R&D. Walk us through that.
Well, it's really interesting. Most of the stuff that we do is based on perceived need, but and I saw a really nice opportunity, and we got engaged with an IP acquisition, right? So we went into kind of an agreement where we were going to produce a piece of equipment designed around a certain set of IP. So we're doing a licensing deal, and it was like, oh, okay, cool. And what happened was we ended up, you go along this road, and I had a full engineering house, and we had 3 guys, intermittently dedicated to it. And you start spending, and you're going down this road, and you start, you think we thought we had it. Like we had nailed this place. We got there, and we had this machine. And so we started teasing out, started talking to people and getting the information out. And we got all this interest kind of going preliminarily. And then we had this failure, technical failure, that reared its head kind of late. It was odd. It was like way down the process. Like we'd done a lot of testing, and and then all of a sudden we had this moment where this failure shows its ugly head. And we're caught off guard, because it was nothing we'd ever conceived of, and we had expert help behind us. Like we had gone to these other companies to get the support on these products, and we had all this support that had led us down this path. And we got farther down the road. To long story short, I mean, I went 4 or 5 years in. I mean, I can't even, embarrassingly, I don't want to tell you what we spent. We're up there. We're almost at the 7-figure mark in a complete failure. right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot to that. And that when because we're small and we invest and we have an idea, so you have this whole organization gets excited about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of having it isolated and having it done and be like, hey, look what we did. We're like, everybody's all built up. It's exciting.
Yeah.
The buzz is out there.
Right.
So, for me, that's, and R&D is like that all the time for me, because we're constantly working on things to fill holes and stuff like that. But, they're not all hits, A, B,
Sure.
and B, sometimes they take a long time. Like our grinder took 6 years. And you think, God, it's just a grinder, but it's different than anything else on the market. It's a completely different piece of equipment. But you just can't understand the impact, right, of a project like that. It's hard to project that impact, right? So I'm learning. I haven't been able to apply all the structural stuff to that process yet, because that's more of this free-flowing developmental kind of, in creative process that I like to have people engaged in. But but on the other side of it, you can find yourself following down rabbit holes and getting lost. And then there's time and money gone, right? You don't
absolutely
never get it back. So
yeah. Well, let me ask, so if you were going to hire a CEO to take the reins for your company, what's the one book you would require that he or she read before taking over for you?
I think that the biggest impact to me, and it was the 2-second lean. Right. And the lesson is incremental improvement, right? Not massive, right? So for me, would be the ideal kind of concept, whether, not necessarily the book. The book is a great book, but that would be the idea. Like, we can continuously improve. We don't have to improve everything every day, but a little bit.
Just small incremental changes, 1% a day or whatever. Yeah. Okay, cool. Awesome. Yeah. Very good.
Embodies the company's culture.
Cool. Awesome, Cole. Hey, great having you on the show, man. I just want to take a couple seconds and kind of summarize some of my key takeaways. One is as you're scaling, the lean thing. Even though we talked about the 2-second lean, I'll talk about that in a second. But you're talking about the difference between just being a company that operates and relying on, hey, we do it this way because, and creating those simple SOPs, transitioning the mindset of your team to that, to follow standard operating procedures, write it and follow it and help other people, work with other people, document your structure, critical in a lean environment. The other is the need to really have those objective measurables for quality, for everything else you're doing in your company versus just subjective, right? It looks, I put my thumb in the air and it looks good versus having objective measurables and incremental improvement thing, from 2-second lean. I think that's fantastic. And if you can get that culture of just incremental small improvements every day. We don't need to go and we're not going to win a marathon overnight. This is not a sprint. This is a long-term thing. If there was one takeaway, Cullen, that you'd really want the audience to absorb from today, what would that be?
Well, I and it probably didn't, it's more in a general sense, like I love this adventure and I'm really very happy to have been on it. And I run into people all the time who want to get in, want to do their own business. And it's funny, I'll work with them and I never begrudge anybody the opportunity, right? Or the desire, like, please follow it. I've loved it. I enjoy it. But I'm going to tell you, it may not be for you. And that's
it's a roller coaster.
And it can be brutally difficult. It can be hard on family. It can be hard on friends. It can be hard on a lot of things. So, it's a journey that I have watched a couple other companies go on, and I've helped a couple other companies go through, and some have been grateful and some not. But it's a journey that I enjoy. But I also, again, I've met people, and you don't want to tell them like you don't have the stones for this. But on the other hand, I want you to know, like, be ready, because you're going to be challenged at the core of who you are, and you're challenged at the core of what you believe in. And so if you're willing to face those things and get challenged on everything you're weak in, great, you're going to love it.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Thanks for that, Cullen.
Yeah.
So if any of our listeners want to reach out and get a hold of you for perhaps your services in your company, or to purchase one of your machinery, or questions from today, how could they do that?
Sure. So it's GreenBroz, GreenBroz.com is
Awesome.
our homepage. That's where we sit. We're on Instagram and all the socials as well. LinkedIn.
Yep. Yep.
On info, you can there's info@GreenBroz, which is the general question email. If somebody has a question for me directly, if you reach out to info and say you heard it on the podcast and you want space, we don't get enough email to bog it down. Like, I'll pay attention.
You'll get it. Yeah.
I'll get it back and I'll get in touch with you. I mean, I'm pretty open with
Cool.
Talking about these things and communicating with people about this adventure, because
Awesome. Yeah, and we'll have your LinkedIn profile link in there as well. So if anyone wants to reach out there, that's there as well. Yeah. Awesome, Cullen. And thanks again for being on the show, man. This was a great episode. I loved hearing your journey. It's always fantastic to have such a successful CEO on the show who's you started with the grind, and here you are, man. It's not ending. You're keeping it going. So thanks again.
The grind continues, and
the grind continues.
I appreciate it.
Awesome.
And thank you for your service. And one of the things that we're really proud of, we do support our veteran community a lot, and very happy to always work with people who have shared that experience, because it's not the same for all of us, but we did share something that no one can take.
Absolutely. We got that forever. For listeners, please hit like and subscribe and help us spread the word about the show and what we're doing here. We're helping the next generation of our leaders and CEOs be that much more successful. With that, we'll see you in the next episode.